Raising babies with an angel on earth I found worthless.
Here we are, and welcome back
We're
to
back.
the
This
Q
is the Q Show.
How you been, Brian?
Been okay. How about you?
Well, we did. We did a Q Show last week with Pat, where we actually played music and had an amplifier. It was just it was fun.
Nice.
I'll say that much. So we reformatted things a bit and moved stuff around, and all in all, you know, it's been a thing. So this one's going to air on July 4th, and July 4th that will be it'll be a holiday for everyone here in the States.
Right.
For all you watching overseas, it will not be a holiday for you, but that's okay. You can pretend like it is.
Yeah. So normally we live stream, but this is pre-recorded, so we can actually be on holiday.
Yeah, exactly. So let me see. Well, I was going to say, what are you doing for the holidays? You know, here, I have to actually stay here at work. So today I will be coming in Friday because that's one of the unfortunate side effects of all the fireworks and all that sort of stuff. My dog is just terrified of fireworks. So shout out to my dog, Harley. But she is mortified of fireworks, like shakes and is terrified. And the louder they get, the worse it gets. So I'm actually going to be here Friday. So I'll be at work Friday. But I'm bringing in a pizza oven and making pizza. You know,
Wow.
one of those Uno, I think they call it, pizza oven things. Anyway, that's what I'll be doing. What are you going to do?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah. Nothing.
Yeah. Recovering from Brian's had a bit under the weather a little bit here. So.
Yeah, I've been sick for the last 2 weeks almost. So,
Which is cool though. It gives you that, you know, deep, sexy voice, which I don't have, but I try. Well, let's get on with the show. So hopefully you guys are having fun out there. But what did we talk about last time with the Elevate? So we're back on the Elevate again.
back on the Elevate, and last time, which was 2 weeks ago, we talked about the EQ, which is both the pre-EQ and the post-EQ.
Yep.
And the cab block.
Okay. And this week, what are we going? Oh.
And
but we've had questions since
we
our
had a
last
couple
live stream.
questions. Had a couple questions since last time, and so this actually we got two questions from Jerry. First question is well, not really a question, more of a statement. I wish it had an effects loop for my other pedals. And well, you know, the thing is that most pedals can be run either before or after Elevate.
So if you have like distortion pedal, it can go in front just fine.
Yeah. And I'm doing what I usually do here, cheating a little bit, looking at the user manual. Because we've already anticipated that this would be a question that we would get. And so we kind of made a list of a lot of effects and where you can probably put them in relation to Elevate. So before Elevate's input, you probably put like a tuner, a wah, compressor, boost pedal, overdrive, distortion. And then effects that you would want to put after would be things like EQ, octave, or a pitch shifter, modulation-based effects, delay-based effects. If you're going to use a separate cab emulator, a looper, or a volume pedal, those are things you can put after Elevate's output.
Right.
I mean, that covers a lot. So it's pretty rare that you're going to find that you would need to insert an effects pedal somewhere in the middle of the signal chain.
Right. In this case, I mean, I think the argument most people would have is if I'm creating distortion on this and then I want it to go through some other, other sound, that would be when you could do it, but you still can.
Yeah.
That's kind of the.
Yeah. I know some people have certain preferences when it comes to their signal flow order.
Right.
In reality, a lot of effects you can kind of interchange the order of, and it's going to sound, if not exactly the same, it's going to sound almost exactly the same.
Right.
And so things like delay-based effects and even modulation effects, you can kind of interchange those,
Right.
and it's still going to work fine.
Well, and it's really kind of that's for if you have some special effect that kind of isn't already on the device in the first place that really does something, like I have a what is it, a Qtronic, I don't even know what on earth it's called. Qtronic, I think, is what it's called. But in that case, I would just use that after the after the elevate. Okay. So all stands to reason. Good question, Jerry.
And so let's see, what else? Okay, Jerry also asked, can I bypass the cab sim on the 1/4-inch TS out so that I can connect to a power amp input of a guitar amplifier, but leave the XLR out cab sim on to connect to PA? So the 1/4-inch outputs and XLR outputs are physically tied together, so you can't have those. He can't have the cab sim separate between those two. But on the headphone output, which can also be used as an auxiliary output, that always has the cab sim on it. And so you can turn the cab sim off on the other outputs, so the 1/4-inch and XLR,
right, and
leave the cab sim on the auxiliary output. And so to use that auxiliary output to run to like a monitor, direct to a mixer, you just need an insert cable.
Right.
Or you sometimes
and you can adjust the level differently too, right?
Yeah, and you can adjust the level independently between the headphone/auxiliary output and the line outputs.
Okay.
So you can do it that way. You just need an insert cable or a splitter cable.
Right.
Which will convert that TRS to two TS jacks.
Okay, and it looks like we have we have something for our Fact Up section.
Fact Up. Yeah, so we answer your questions again because you weren't paying attention the first time.
Or didn't watch last time.
So we're just poking a little fun at you. There's no hard feelings. We understand that not everybody watches every episode or even all of an episode. And so something that we've answered before, maybe you missed it. But we're going to have a little fun with it anyway.
Yep.
So Jim asked, and he even admitted that maybe he missed this in a previous episode. He says, I need to ask, does the Elevate use the same algorithms or otherwise the effects that are the basis for the Neunaber effects, such as the wet reverb and Inspire? So the short answer is yes, but the long answer is that I've actually made a few changes, a few additions, a few enhancements. So
it's better.
So, for example, okay, let's talk about at least the two things that Jim brought up: the wet reverb, or the reverb, and the chorus. So the reverb.
Or the Inspire, tri-chorus, yeah.
Yeah. So the reverb is based on the wet reverb algorithm.
Right.
But I did make some modifications to it so that it works better for creating small room type spaces. Right. So the wet reverb, if you're familiar with it, you know that it sounds great for really large spaces, but it doesn't do very well for like small spaces. And I wanted something that was going to be a little more versatile for Elevate. And so I modified the algorithm so it works better across a wider range of acoustic spaces.
So it's like moist reverb for that? Okay, I'm going to get the dad joke. We're going to have a dad joke segment if I keep it up. No, but no, having used it, in fact, I was just using it yesterday. And I have to say that I thought to myself, wow. So, Jim, for what it's worth, I'm just as fact up as you are. Because I was thinking to myself, this sounds so much like the wet reverb, but like not the long version of it. And I meant to ask too. So, there you go.
Yeah. And then he asked about the Inspire, which is the tri-chorus. And this does contain a tri-chorus algorithm, which is similar to the Inspire. The Inspire actually had like 8 different versions of choruses that were based on a tri-chorus in some way. And so this doesn't have all of those different types of tri-choruses.
Right.
But it does have a tri-chorus, and it does add several other types of chorusing algorithms that are not tri-choruses. So
It's pretty, yeah. Again, I'll make the argument, because I had a tri-chorus myself. So I'll make the argument that it's better because you can kind of do more with it.
you can do a lot
Yeah.
more with it. Yeah. It's actually the mod, and we're going to cover that today, the modulation section. There's a lot you can do with it. It sounds great. I'm really pleased with how it sounds.
So that's what we're digging into today, modulation.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a great segue. So let's go ahead and dive right into the effects section. So we're going to talk about the modulation block, the echo block, reverb block, and then a few other things that, a few other effects that you can do with Elevate. So let's start with the mod block. And again, I'm pulling up my cheat sheet here so that I don't miss anything. Okay. I guess I should say that people, when they refer to a modulation effect, I think some people mean different things
Right.
than what I think a modulation effect is. So I want to clarify what I would describe as a modulation
Right.
effect. Because I've heard people call reverb a modulation effect, and I don't think of, even though you can have modulated reverbs, I don't think of a reverb as a modulation effect.
Right.
So when I say modulation effect, what I'm talking about are effects that modulate either the amplitude of the signal or the pitch of the signal.
Right.
Or in the case of like a flanger, you're modulating the time of the signal
Right.
in relation to the dry signal. So you're modulating one of those things, and that's results in a modulation effect by my definition.
And that seems reasonable. Yeah. I always just thought of them as like choruses and flangers and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. But it's a good point. Tremolo and vibrato
Right.
actually are in fact modulating your tone. So it
Right.
kind of stands to reason. Yeah.
And actually think in all of those effects other than tremolo are all closely related.
Right.
And we're not going to get down into the technical details of that today, but those are all closely related, in a technical way. Tremolo is a little different because you're modulating the amplitude,
Right.
but it shares some of those inner workings of the effect.
Right.
So the modulation block actually has 3 groups of effects. It has a tremolo group, a modulation 1 group, and a modulation 2 group. The tremolo and mod 1 groups share a sine wave LFO. An LFO is a low frequency oscillator. And the mod 2 group uses a triangle LFO. And so of those 3 groups, you can have any one of the effects in those 3 groups all run together. So you can pick one from each group
Oh, wow.
and use them simultaneously, or just one from a particular group or one from 2 groups.
Wow.
In addition to that, we've incorporated frequency banding, which splits the signal into high, mid, and low frequency bands
Wow.
and passes just the mids through the effects.
Right.
So if you don't want that, you can just move the lower and upper frequencies, just move the low frequency all the way down, the
Right.
high frequency all the way up. And so the full bandwidth will run through the effect.
Right.
But if you do use the frequency banding, you can limit what part of the frequency spectrum the modulation
Oh, that's
will be
cool.
applied to. And that, so you can use that to do something. There's a couple of things you can do with this. One example is something similar to a rotary effect.
Right.
So by just putting putting that lower frequency around 700-800 hertz, you're just putting stuff above that through
Right.
the modulation. And then by combining tremolo and vibrato, you can get that rotary speaker effect.
Wow.
It's not quite. I mean, some people out there are going to be like, oh, well, what about the low frequency rotation and all this? So it's not exact,
Right.
but it is fairly close. And so other things you can do are you can set the upper frequency. You can roll that down and let some of those higher frequencies just pass through dry. So the modulation's just on
Right.
like the lows and the mids. And that gives you more of an sort of analog sounding
Right.
modulation effect. But because an analog chorus is going to roll off more of those high frequencies.
Right.
But in this case, you're not really rolling them off. You're just letting them pass through dry.
Right.
And so it gives you the more the analog sound, but it doesn't change the overall spectrum.
Right.
It's because it's still letting the high frequencies come through. You don't get that sort of dull sound.
Yeah, I'm going to be playing with this quite a bit later because that I can just think of. I want to really band limit it and do crazy things. Yeah.
It also allows you to. So in some effects like the chorus doubler or the detune doubler,
Right.
are fairly dramatic sounding effects.
Right.
And maybe you like the way the effect sounds, but you don't want it to be so obvious.
Right.
And so by using the frequency banding, you can limit it to a narrower frequency range to make it more subtle.
Oh yeah. Well, and then like I said, you could narrow it down and make it dramatic, and then have craziness in the middle of your.
Right. If you had something that really, that was really crazy and just limit it to a narrow spectrum.
Right.
That might be interesting. I don't think I've tried that.
I haven't tried it. That's why I'm
Yeah.
going to be experimenting later. Well, maybe we'll do it while we're doing the podcast.
All right. So let's go through some of the parameters here. And I guess we'll start by going through some of the predefined modes. And again, a mode is sort of a mini preset of parameters. And we've set up several of them to kind of demonstrate some of the effects or combination of effects that you can get with this. Let's run through some of these modulation modes. And so a mode, just a quick refresher on what a mode is. A mode is it's like a mini preset for an effect block.
Right.
And so we've set up several modes to kind of demonstrate the different effects and effect
Right.
combinations you can get from the modulation block. So the first one is a standard chorus. The next one is a slower version of that. The next is a thicker version of that. Then the glassy chorus combines, from what I recall, combines a chorus with a detune effect.
That's really striking.
Then the rat chorus is somewhat reminiscent of a like an 80s rat chorus type effect. subtle version of the rat chorus. Chorus doubler, which is dry on one side and chorus on the other side. Detune doubler, which is dry on one side and detune on the other side. Mono flanger. Stereo flanger. This is intended to be a rotary type effect. Basic tremolo. A stereo panning tremolo. Vibrato. That's it for the modes. So let's dive into the custom mode,
Right.
so we can see all of the parameters that make up how to build these modes.
Right.
So
starting with basically the 3 blocks off.
yeah, so there are 3 groups of effects.
Right.
That you can put together. There's a tremolo group, a mod 1 group, and a mod 2 group. The tremolo and mod 1 groups share a sine wave LFO, or
Right.
low frequency oscillator. The mod 2 group uses a triangle LFO.
Right.
So right now, like, everything is off in this custom. Well, except for the frequency banding, but everything else is off. So that's why you don't really see any of the parameters.
Right.
So parameters will appear when they are applicable to that particular effect that you've enabled.
Right.
So first, we'll turn on one of the tremolos. You can have either a centered tremolo, which is a basic mono tremolo, or panning.
That's just crazy.
And once you enable one of those, then you can adjust the depth of it. Goes from, nothing to 100%. And then also, once one of these effects that uses the sine wave LFO is enabled, you can then adjust the rate. and that's the tremolo. So the next group, mod 1, first we have the chorus doubler. This is dry on one side, chorus on the other side. The next effect in this group is a stereo chorus, which has two chorused voices, one on the left and one on the right, added to the dry signal. The two chorused voices use an LFO that is 90 degrees out of phase between the two channels. Or I should say 90 degrees phase shifted. On this effect, you can, in addition to the pitch amount and sense, you can also adjust how much of the chorused voice is added to the dry signal. The next effect in this group is the tri-chorus. Tri-chorus has three chorused voices panned left, center, right. Like the stereo chorus, you can adjust the amount of the chorused voice that is summed into the dry signal, as well as the pitch depth. The next effect in this group is vibrato. The pitch depth on this is going to depend on how you set your speed. Or I should say the maximum pitch depth. And those are all of the effects in the mod 1 group. So let's move on to the mod 2 group. The first effect in this group is a mono flanger. On this you can adjust the rate as well as the amount of time over which the flanger sweeps. The next effect in this group is the stereo flanger. next effect in this group, the Mod 2 group, is the detune chorus. So on this, you can adjust the amount of the detune chorus that's added in. This will have 2 voices, one on each side, added to the dry signal. And the next effect in this group is the detune doubler. This is dry on one side and a detune on the other side. On this effect, you can adjust the speed and the pitch depth. And that's all the effects in the Mod 2 group. So let's stack a couple of these together and see what it sounds like. I'm gonna try the detune chorus. And I'm just going to put in a little bit of the panning tremolo. Along with the tri-chorus.
That's pretty.
All right, so let's try the frequency banding on this because this is a pretty dramatic effect. So let's try to dial that back by just using the frequency banding. So it really gives you a lot of flexibility.
Well, what's cool is, the punchiness was all gone, but it was this cool, swirly twirly. We were in the land of swirly twirly gumdrops, as they would say on Elf. But you were able to dial it back to something that still had the punchiness and that upper end extension without kind of overwhelming it with the effect. Yeah, that's bandpass effects. It's like having multiple pedals and being able to mix them in a studio after the fact. Kind of cool.
Yeah. So that's the modulation block. Let's move on to the echo.
Cool. Let's move on to the echo. Echo, echo, echo. Well, that worked.
All right, so let's start by just going through some of the modes again. I'm going to turn the mix up a little bit.
Okay.
So you can really hear it. The mix on this goes from 0 all the way to 100%. 100% is just, 100% echo. Okay. So you got a basic single repeat echo. A stereo tape echo. Long tape loop. The echo verb. Sort of an echo that devolves into a reverb-ish type thing. Ping pong center. You like how it goes
That's crazy.
left, right, center, left, right, center?
Oh, it's making my brain hurt. There's math going on.
Basic slapback.
Oh, yeah.
Moving
Oh,
target.
it's going left and right. Well, now it's going right. Now it's...
Yeah.
Okay. It's a moving target. I get it.
Sort of swirls around. And that's it for the modes. So let's get into the custom parameters to kind of see how you might build some of these types of effects. So let's see. A couple things I should probably mention first. So when you change the echo time on this, it will crossfade between the old time and the new time. And so
interesting.
it makes this makes it for a transparent change.
So if you have like a short delay on your A preset or on a different preset, and you have a long delay on the other, it'll crossfade between the two?
Yeah, I mean, or even if you're just scrolling through, changing the echo time, then it just, successively like crossfades to each new time.
Gotcha.
And so that eliminates with some echo effects. When you change the delay time, you can get it changes the pitch, or sometimes you get zipper noise, or sometimes they'll just mute it until the new one comes in.
Gotcha.
So it eliminates all that.
So what is that?
So let's go ahead and play.
Let's see how it looks. Oh, it feels like it's slowing down.
Yeah.
Usually it goes or something crazy like that. Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
All right. And let's see, what else? What else should I mention here? I should probably mention how tap tempo works with the echo.
Right.
So normally, if you just tap tempo, it just changes the delay time to whatever you tap in. And you notice it shows you in both milliseconds and beats per minute, what your current tap tempo time is.
Right.
Now, when you do that, it doesn't change the preset. It just substitutes the tap tempo for whatever was there before.
Right.
So then you can go and change the preset and do whatever you're going to do. It's not going to hold you up. It's not going to ask you, do you want to save this?
Right.
because it's not modifying the preset.
Right.
Now, if you do want to use the tap tempo to set the delay time to make a preset, then you just go to the delay time screen, and now if you tap it, it will change. It'll write that into the, well, it won't write it into the preset, but it modifies the temporary preset and
Right.
will prompt you to save it if you try to exit out. Okay, so you can use it either way, but normally the assumption is, you get your preset set up, and you want to tap in a new tempo because maybe, you're not playing to a click track and the band playing the song maybe a little bit fast, and so you just want to change the delay time
On the fly.
On the fly.
Yeah.
But when you go to your next preset, you don't want that. You just want to forget that when
Yeah.
you move to the next preset or change over to the B variant. So that's basically how the tap tempo works. Now there's a couple of other things that can modify the delay time. So one thing is, if you have a delay time set to less than 150 milliseconds,
Right.
it's going to assume that you're doing like a slapback type effect.
Right.
And you wouldn't use tap tempo to try to set a slapback delay. Like you can't really tap that fast. So when you do have a preset that has a delay time of less than 150 milliseconds,
Right.
the tap tempo LED will actually turn off.
Yeah.
And you won't be able to tap in a tap tempo because it's assuming you're using it as a slapback echo type effect.
Right.
And that's going to take priority over. So that takes priority over the tap tempo, takes priority over the MIDI clock.
Right.
If you're using MIDI clock to try to set the delay time. All right. I mentioned MIDI clock. Now you can put in a MIDI clock and use that to set the delay time.
Right.
You have to enable that in the preset, in the echo block. You see there's a parameter here for MIDI
Right.
clock. So if you have that enabled, then the MIDI clock is going to override the tap tempo as well as the preset echo time that's in the time that's in the preset.
Right.
If the clock is enabled and you have this parameter set to enabled.
Right.
Okay, so there's a little bit of a priority hierarchy that takes place with the delay time, just to be aware. So you're aware of that. All right, so let's go back to the top. Where was I? All right, echo mix. We went through some of the modes. All right, so the first screen is the regen and the crossfeed. Regen is the amount of the echo that is fed back into the inputs. Okay?
Right.
So 0 if you don't want any trails or you want no repeats. And then you can go all the way 100%. Now you should be aware that when you've got the regen set really high, it's going to try to prevent overload by attenuating the input into the echo.
Right.
Okay. Now, crossfeed is how much of each echo output is fed back into the other side, other channel.
Gotcha.
So at 0%, each echo just feeds back to its own input, right?
Right.
Because we're talking about the stereo channels left and right. At 50%, then each input is going to get 50% of each output. And then at 100%, each output feeds back only to the other side.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So you can keep it very stereo or have it kind of fade to a central.
Well, it does some really interesting things. So let's turn the regen up so we can hear it a little better, and then let's play with this a little bit. Oh, so before we do that though,
Yeah.
we'll come back to this because this other parameter is going to affect this a little bit.
Okay.
So we talked about setting the delay time. Here you can set it in milliseconds from 0 to 1,000 milliseconds. It's also going to show you in beats per minute what that equates to as you change it. Now, there's this stereo parameter that has a % plus left and right. What this is doing is determining the stereo offset between the two outputs.
Right.
So right now it's 100%, meaning that both outputs are going to be at 400 milliseconds.
Right.
If I turn this down, let's say 95%, then the left channel is going to be 95% of the right channel.
Got it.
Okay. So using this, you can do, if you just put it at a little bit, like 95%, it just makes it kind of a little bit stereo,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a little bit of difference. You can turn this down and make this, let's go 62% for all you math nerds out there. That is golden ratio rounded to two digits. Um, 50% is going to be ping pong. And then you can do shorter ones, although I might argue they become less useful. But in order to get the interesting cross feeding, you have to set this at something lower than 100%.
Gotcha.
Okay. And then left versus right, it just picks which channel is going to be
Cross-feeding the
going
other.
to be at 90% in this case, right? So you can say I want the right channel to be 90% of the left channel, or the left channel to be 90% of the right channel. It's
Yeah.
all right. So let's leave this at let's try 97% and go back to crossfeed and see what happens as we turn this up. Not a whole lot. Let's try bringing this down. Actually, let's try. Yeah, let's bring this down a little bit. Sounds like something's happening. And then let's bring the crossfeed back down a little bit. So it does some kind of interesting things. What I want to do is I want to pick the mode here, moving target. I'm going to load this into custom so I can see what I did here to get that effect. Because I used the crossfeed to get it to sound like it was moving.
Right.
So here I've got the crossfeed at 30%. Oh, and I actually do have it at 100% here. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting how it does that. Okay, so we talked about the regen, the crossfeed, the time, setting the stereo tap left versus right. On the next screen, we have the subdivision setting. So normally, you might have this set at quarter note, which is just 1-to-1. And so this is going to be displayed as the number of repeats per the number of beats. So 1-to-1 in this case. First digit is the number of repeats. Second digit is per the number of beats. And so when you have one repeat per beat, that's a quarter note tempo.
Right.
And so we put in a bunch of options here that are all these integer ratios, and some of them equate to familiar tempo subdivisions.
Right.
Other ones don't. They're just weird polyrhythms. And so we named them where it actually made sense. And then in other cases, we just called it, some kind of polyrhythm. So in this case, you've got like 6 repeats per 5 beats. And 5 repeats per 4 beats. All right, the next one, 4 repeats per 3 beats. That's a dotted eighth. And so when you pick one of these, it's not going to change what's actually blinking on the tap tempo foot switch. Tap tempo foot switch, the LED always blinks at the quarter note tempo.
Right.
This is just going to set the delay time to some subdivision of that.
Right.
There's an eighth note, 2 to 1. Dotted 16th. Triplet eighth. 16th note is the fastest one, 4 to 1. All right, so those are fun to play with, a lot of options there. And then this next screen is a filter. So this sets a high frequency filter. You can set how much. It's a shelf filter, so you can set how much you want to roll off and at what frequency. So in this case, it's minus 3 dB at 1 kilohertz. What happens if I make this, set this all the way down?
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like a weird tape echo.
Wow. And then if I just take it out, then you get more full range. And this is in the regeneration loop. So
Right.
each successive repeat is going to get filtered through this. So it'll get darker and darker and darker if you have the filter in. And then I think this is going to be the last screen on this. This is the low frequency or the low filter frequency. This is just a high pass filter, and you set the frequency.
Right.
So it's going to roll off the lows below this frequency. And this helps take out some muddiness, especially if you got a lot of repeats. And this is actually before the delay, so it's not in the repeat loop.
Right.
Oh, there's one more screen. You can select whether you want bypass trails or not. So this is going to affect when you change presets.
Right.
From a preset that has an echo to another preset that also has an echo or that doesn't have an echo.
Right.
In that case, if you want the echo to trail out after you switch, then you have this, you'll enable this. And if you just want the repeats to stop abruptly, then you turn the bypass to normal. Which I'm not going to demonstrate now because we don't have.
We'd have to set it all up first.
And then the last parameter is the MIDI clock. We touched on a little bit. This just selects whether you want to sync this, the echo time in this preset to the MIDI clock, if you have a MIDI clock connected, or if you want to ignore it. And that's it. That's everything in the echo block.
Beautiful.
All right, let's move on to reverb.
I can tell the bypass trails was
Yeah, see, I disabled
good
the echo.
example.
Yeah, and it was still trailed off.
yeah.
So I should mention that the trails does not apply to main bypass. Main bypass is when I hold down the recall foot switch, it bypasses the entire unit. So Whoa. So you don't get trails in that case.
Yeah.
All right, reverb to my cheat sheet.
We need more cowbell. No, more reverb.
Okay, we talked about this earlier. This is kind of based on the wet reverb, but it's been modified to sound better with small spaces. I mean, it still sounds great, with large spaces, but it's just, I think, a little more versatile overall. Okay, so the top level parameter here is reverb mix. Gonna turn this up so you can hear it. Next parameter is the mode. So let's go through some of the modes so you can hear them. Let's start. They're organized kind of smallest to largest.
Gotcha.
So first one is dark room. And then just room. Plate. Chamber. Studio. Hall. Cavern. Dreamy. This is just a big modulated reverb.
Yeah, I can hear the modulation.
All right, let's pick the studio reverb and load that into the custom mode and go through the parameters. So you've got the familiar decay setting, seconds.
So you can make that just go forever. Wow.
I mean, 60 seconds is pretty big.
I'll see you guys in a minute.
Yeah.
The same as the delay, though, that when you back the parameter off, it goes with you, I'm noticing. So it didn't keep on going for 60 seconds while you did that. It's kind of
Right,
cool. Yeah.
right. Next parameter is pre-delay. This is the amount of delay before the reverb tail starts. You can have up to 150 milliseconds. Let's turn this down so you can kind of hear it. Okay. Next parameter is tone tilt, which it's an EQ that tilts the entire frequency spectrum of the reverb.
Right.
Right. So positive values are going to tilt it up. Negative values are going to tilt it down. This is in dB per decade.
Oh, wow. That's handy.
Next parameter is the low filter. This is a high pass filter, so it just rolls off everything below the frequency here,
Right.
which is 300 hertz. So this kind of keeps the reverb from getting muddy. And then the high damping is a filter in the regeneration of the reverb.
Right.
So this simulates the high frequency absorption of air.
Right.
So lower values will give you a darker reverb sound. And higher values a brighter sound.
Yeah.
Also, you will get some high frequency absorption with like materials on the wall in a room and things like that.
Right.
Just if you're interested, the actual high frequency absorption of air kind of depends on several factors like altitude and temperature and humidity.
Yep.
But like under normal circumstances, I actually like went through the equations to figure out like what filter matches it the best, and about 10 kilohertz
Oh,
is
interesting.
what is what going to match air, like, you know, at like sea level, under, you know, room temperature, 50% humidity, you know, kind of middle of the road settings.
Found out what the middle of the road was. Yeah.
That doesn't account for like if you know, you're going to have stuff on the walls and stuff in the room that's going to absorb some of those high frequencies. But if you're just talking about just the air, then about 10 kilohertz.
That's interesting because you can build your preset then around the concept of like a kind of a general room, if you will. But if you're going to be playing to rooms filled with people, you can modify that and kind of even get your presets to match. Interesting.
The next set of parameters controls the modulation. So percent is the amount of the modulation, and hertz is the speed. And then the last parameter is trails. Just like the echo, you can pick if you want the reverb tail to trail off when you change presets,
right?
Or not. You know, normal is just cuts it off. And that's it for the reverb. So, what are we missing?
Expression controller. So what about controlling all these functions?
That's right. So we're going to show you something that you might not know is in here.
Well, I know it's there now because now I'm using it.
So there is an expression control, which we are connected to right here. And you can select what you want that to control. You get 4 things.
Okay.
You've got the level.
Right. Which I have now.
Yeah. That's what you got now. You got the reverb mix.
Yeah.
The echo mix. And the wah.
Oh, interesting.
So there's a wah in here that you just have to enable. So the level EXP block is what controls this. You know, so in addition to the preset level, you can also select you know, if you want to control your volume control, your wah control, your echo mix control, or your reverb mix control.
Right.
So right now we have the expression input tied to the volume control. So you can turn that off if you want. You can also control this with MIDI control change 11.
Oh, gotcha.
So
if I wanted wah and volume at the same time, I could have that.
If you have a MIDI controller, and an expression pedal through the MIDI controller, you can do 2 things at once that way.
Wow.
So let's go to the wah control. So just like with the volume control, you can use MIDI control change 11, or there's a bonus controller for the wah.
Yeah. Auto. Why is it that when it goes wah, I feel the need to actually like move my mouth with it, even when it's on auto? Okay, how are you doing that? Come on, dude.
So
That's
it
actually
just
pretty
uses
good.
it just uses the input level.
Right.
That's all. It uses the input level as a controller.
So how, as,
it.
the louder it is, the more it was.
Yeah. So louder means toe down.
Gotcha. Oh, crazy. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it works.
And then where I lost where I was. Okay. Let's turn that off. And echo mix control. Got to turn the echo on for this. And it's going to control this as a proportion of what you set the echo mix to. So I'm just going to crank this up.
That's making my brain go through gymnastics.
Probably tough to control all the way up. We'll back this off a little bit.
Oh, that could be really cool for a lot of times when you want to create kind of like, epic ethereal effects. Especially if you mix it in with something that had faded out the like you have,
Yeah.
faded out the sharpness of the attacks, and now I can add that in and out. That's cool.
So let's go ahead and move on to the reverb mix. So let's pick this beat. Turn this up. Turn this off and turn this on.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, you might be wondering, can I control more than one thing at a time?
Thought had crossed my mind there.
And you can.
So if you give me volume and reverb at the same time?
So, well, let's start with
Echo, okay.
Let's start with echo and reverb at the same time. Let's make this. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's all the volume control.
So you can do them all at once.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. My brain hurts. I want to get away. Well, speaking of, I want to get away. It's I think time to wrap it up. Let
It is.
everybody go enjoy the 4th of July festivities, and if you live in Huntington Beach, please don't shoot too many fireworks off. No, just kidding. Well, do what you got to do. I'll be here at work.
All right. So next live stream will be July 11th, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern.
So while you're eating lunch over there in New York,
And I
tune
think
in.
we're gonna talk about Elevate, compressor, noise gate, tuner, and global parameters next time.
Yeah, we'll spend some time, run through, let you hear it, and see where we land. So thank you all for tuning in. Feel free to you can comment in the comment section below. I hate to say make sure you like and subscribe, but make sure you like and subscribe and ring that bell. Otherwise, nobody cares. Well, maybe nobody cares anyway. We'll find out. But hey, make sure to share with your friends. And we're excited. We're going to be launching this thing pretty soon. And I have to say, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do with this thing. I know what I did with it, but let's see what you can do with it. Huh?
All right.
We're out of here.
We're out.
Happy 4th.
I found peace, loving on those who hate me. I found joy, raising babies with an angel on earth. I found worthless, saving dollars on a rock in space. I won't kill for gold. No, no one can tell me that it's over. I know you came back from the grave, and I own nothing if it pulls me away.
So let's start with, actually, let's just turn this up. We'll bypass it to begin with. And turn it on. Here's a slower chorus. It's a thicker chorus. There's a glassy chorus.
For you fans of the 80s and 90s.
The rat chorus combines, from what I remember, it combines a chorus and a detune chorus. And then a more subtle version of that. Chorus doubler. This is emulates some of the older chorus pedals. Like a long time ago, I had an Arion chorus pedal,
Right.
and that's what this does. Right. This is like it's dry on one side and chorus on the other side.
Right.
Detune doubler.
This was really useful. That was really useful when I was doing the 5150 EVH patches. Yeah.
Yeah. This is also the type of chorus that was in the Rockman.
Yeah. There it is.
Mono flanger. Stereo flanger. Vibrato, and I think this is sort of a rotary type effect. And then here's just a basic tremolo. We may not be in stereo right now.
Yeah, it's not panning.
Yeah. So I guess if we were in stereo, you would hear this panning left to right. But it sounds like we've got the two channels summed. And then the basic vibrato. All right.
Is that
Actually, let me double check something.
Is that vibrato?
Outputs are in stereo. Okay.
Is that vibrato? Is that changing the? Because how does that differ from tremolo? That's my question.
So vibrato changes the pitch.
Ah,
Tremolo changes the amplitude.
gotcha. So it's like having a whammy bar and
Right. It's
moving,
and
yeah.
ironically, the whammy bar is sometimes called a tremolo.
Yeah, but it's
But it's
only
not.
ever a vibrato.
It's a vibrato.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go to the custom mode and we'll go through, and so you can see all of the effects and all the parameters. adjust those effects. All right. First, let me go through, make sure everything is off, and I'm just going to turn the